If we can come to order, colleagues, we'll make a start. It is 6 o'clock now. Welcome everybody in the Council chamber taking part in this planning committee, our officers looking in, and I do hope some of our public out there who may find something of interest on our agenda this evening. We do have a very welcome visitor from Wyre Borough Council Planning Committee. He comes on a night when we are fairly thin on the ground, but we hope there's one big item there which might create a bit of interest. So without further ado, colleagues, can we go to item 1 on your agenda? If anybody has an interest in any matter before the Council and its Planning Committee, would you declare your interest? No response to that, so I can take it there aren't any to declare, and we go to the minutes of our last meeting, item 2. This was quite a warm meeting, I think, if we remember, and an amendment was carried, which is unusual in itself, and the minutes record that decision, the decision-taking process. Are we happy to accept them as a true record of our debate and discussion and decisions? And it's for me to sign them as a true record. Thank you very much. Thanks, Jennifer. And then it's item 3 for you to note, planning appeals lodged and determined. Are we happy with those? I think it's worth considering the appeals with a bit of a mixed blessing there. I think we often say that appeals are very, very useful in the planning process because it keeps us on our toes and it helps to identify the planning balance on issues where, you know, there may be some argument as to which way of the line an approval should go. And there we've, I think, one or two interesting decisions, but altogether I don't think they cause the department, Susan, any real trouble, or do they? Would you like to comment?
Thank you, Chair. One of the decisions is a matter of concern. It is 20 Bairstow Street, which was an application for holiday accommodation. Up to now, we have always applied our standard residential requirements to holiday accommodation because it is a form of residential accommodation. The inspector did acknowledge that we were able to do that, and he agreed with our approach that holiday accommodation is a sui generis use, which is useful. We do have some concerns about the weight that has been given to the standard of the internal fit out. This was a retrospective application, the work's had already been done, and from reading the inspector's comments, he did seem to give particular weight to that, which of course is not a material planning consideration. It's not something that we can control. But this will have a bearing on how we look at future applications, but I think we are looking to maintain a firm line on this because obviously quality is our primary concern. Thank you, Chair.
Well, it's a dig in the ribs for us, isn't it? But the main thrust of the policy, of course, the inspectors supported us on, because obviously it's part of our drive to raise the standard of accommodation, both in the private and the public sector, and to make sure we don't get any more homes in multiple occupation, which is still a big threat to the quality of our accommodation, I'm afraid. Right, well, with those notes from Susan, do we accept the report? And then you've also got before you item 4, an update on planning enforcement. We do keep picking up new matters to be explored with our still very much depleted enforcement team, and you see the figures before you. There's not a lot we can do about that. We just wish them all a fair wind and hope that these figures over time will come down. But would you note the report? Thank you very much. And then can we turn to the only planning application before us, and it comes here because, of course, it's not reasonable for a local planning authority to be marking its own homework, so to speak. It might easily have gone through under delegated powers, were it not that it is our own application. One or two objectors, of course, so it comes to committee because it's a major development as well, and we're spending some government money on the development, which I think everybody's going to be happy to see take place. But there it is. Susan, would you like to introduce it for us? You've gone to a great deal of trouble, your team, with Claire Johnson in particular, and it's a major piece of work for you as planners, and I'm sure you've covered every possible angle, and it's a thoroughgoing appraisal of what's intended and how we've managed to improve the initial application. And of course the conditions are there, and as you will see with the update, colleagues, there is an amendment, I think, to condition 4. Susan.
Thank you, Chairman. Just very briefly, the application relates to the Stanley Buildings, which I think you'll all be familiar with. It is locally listed, falls within the town centre conservation area and falls within the setting of a number of statutorily and locally listed buildings. At present, the building is used for retail and offices at ground floor level, with further retail, office space and some residential at first floor level. The application seeks permission for the refurbishment of the whole building complex, and this would involve facade repairs and alterations, replacement windows and removal of existing canopies. The shop fronts would be replaced. Each would follow the same format, and together they would create a coherent frontage, taking the building closer back towards its original design and improving legibility. The alterations would create a stronger vertical emphasis. Throughout the process, due consideration has been given to the different options available and to the relative costs of the different elements, and as always, it's been essential to ensure that the refurbishment is financially viable. A significant amount of the original building fabric would be lost as a result of the scheme, including areas of faience tiling and some original windows. This would harm the heritage value of the asset, but would also enable the repairs that would safeguard its long-term future. Overall, the proposal is anticipated to result in less than significant harm to the building complex. It is considered that this harm would be outweighed by the public benefits that would result from securing the building's future, including employment, retention of the heritage asset, and visual improvement to the street scene that would arise from the refurbishment. The Council's Conservation Officer has considered the proposal at length and has raised no objection. The Blackpool Civic Trust has not offered comment. 4 of the existing retailers have objected to the scheme, and their comments are detailed in the officer report. The benefits of inconsistent or mismatching shop fronts are not accepted, as the building was originally designed to be uniform and coherent. The central courtyard area would operate on a one-way basis to ensure that existing servicing is not compromised, and the units would benefit from improved access and refuse storage, along with some landscaping and seating. Subject to the conditions listed both in the officer report and on the update note, no highway concerns are identified. The scheme would result in the loss of 2 dwellings, but as the council can comfortably identify a 5-year housing land supply, this doesn't weigh notably against the proposal. No issues relating to ecology, drainage, amenity or environmental quality are anticipated. I have mentioned the update note as chairman and would draw members' attention to that and the proposed conditions. The case officer has also provided a number of plans and photographs to help illustrate both the scheme and the existing situation. Overall, the proposal is expected to regenerate a prominent site within the town centre and safeguard the future of a heritage asset. As such, members are respectfully recommended to grant planning permission subject to the conditions listed. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. Can we now ask Mr Alban Cassidy on behalf of the applicant if he would like to direct committee in a direction that he thinks we should follow? Mr Cassidy.
Thank you, Chair.
Good evening, Councillors. My name is Alban Cassidy of Cassidy and Ashton. We are the agents for this application. I'm here to make a short presentation in support of the application, but I'll try not to take up too much of your time. The application site is known as the Stanley Buildings and consists of the red brick and stone former Midland Bank building, which sits on King's Square and is the oldest building on the site, together with the well-known Art Deco 2- and 3-storey flat roof building, which was built in about 1935. The Stanley buildings as a whole are laid out in a triangular arrangement with an open courtyard in the middle. At ground floor, the majority of uses are retail, although there are currently a number of vacancies. Above these is mainly office space, which is currently largely unused. The application site, as you've been told, is a locally lifted building, and the site as a whole sits within the town centre conservation area near to a number of other heritage assets. Heritage is therefore an important issue to consider. The building as a whole is in very poor condition, and without remedial action, it will unfortunately continue to deteriorate and become an eyesore in a key part of the town centre, which will undermine wider regeneration initiatives. The proposals in front of you this evening are to both refurbish and reconfigure the existing building to provide a mixed-use development, which will include a mix of retail, cafe and office space, the details of which are set out in the report. The repairs and refurbishments that are proposed are extensive and are detailed in the report, but crucially, great care has been taken to ensure that they've been agreed with your officers after extensive consideration of the options with your conservation team. Although there will be some loss of historical fabric, it is considered that the overall benefits in terms of restoring the whole of the building to a viable use and the return to a more attractive and uniform appearance will outweigh the minimal harm that will result. Overall, the works will result in a more attractive and appropriate building set within the town centre conservation area. Looking at the individual issue, the principle of development is highly appropriate in its town centre location. The mix of uses will create a vibrancy for the whole building, making the office space more attractive to let and bringing new retailers and cafe operators into the vicinity of the site. It will also benefit the wider area by bringing additional activity and therefore potential custom into this part of the town centre. The reuse of all parts of the existing building will also be beneficial to wider urban regeneration initiatives. In respect to heritage matters, by working closely with your conservation team, we've been able to produce a scheme which balances the heritage interest of the site against the needs of both existing and future users of the site. The creation of a more uniform look will provide a stronger identity for the buildings, which is more in line with their original appearance and assist in restoring them to a more consistent whole. It will also ensure that they sit comfortably alongside other heritage assets in the local area. There will be a loss of 2 residential flats, but as the report states, the town is currently able to demonstrate an adequate housing land supply, so this is not considered to be significant. In terms of other residents within the local area, the requirement for a construction management plan will ensure that residential amenity is respected during the works. The internal courtyard will be improved and made more accessible by the demolition of some of the internal extensions, creating both space for refuse and access for vehicles. The landscaped area will provide an attractive and sheltered resource for future office workers. There have been no highway concerns raised by your officers, but a new loading bay has been asked for and is to be provided on Corner Street. Otherwise, the situation will remain as existing in this town centre location. Overall, we believe that the proposal will significantly enhance this site and restore the original grandeur of this fine example of 1930s Art Deco architecture, and I would ask that you support the officer's recommendation and grant planning permission in line with the report. Thank you.
I know the work you do in the town is very much appreciated. I don't know whether you as an architect, when you think of J.C. Robinson, in the wonderful days when local authorities had a bit of power and could do things, and to make a very significant contribution in architecture to the street scene. And I think Blackpool in the 30s were blessed with a very good architect who did some good work. And this must be one of his finest examples, is it not?
I agree. It is certainly one of an example of early 20th century architecture in conjunction with the local authority that does stand out, and is therefore it is a heritage asset. That's why it is locally listed. I must slightly correct you. I'm actually a town planner, but we are architects as a whole.
Apologies.
No.
Maybe a town important than an architect, who knows? Colleagues, it's open to the committee. The recommendation before you is for approval of this scheme with the conditions laid down and, of course, as slightly amended in your update note. Do I have any contributions? Does anybody want to move approval? It's moved Vice Chairman and Councillor Baker. Anybody wishes to speak? I can put it to the vote. Sorry, yep, sorry, come in, yep.
Sorry, if I may just speak on it. Yeah, it is a significant site, which is very prominent when you're entering, and it has looked in poor state for a long time, and refurbishment of whatever really is essential. From what I've read in here, and I've no reason to believe it won't be as is, it will make a significant improvement to the area. One little question, is the shop frontage that's going to be there, is that going to be uniform throughout? Because at the moment you've got different shops with different frontages. I'm just wondering whether all this is going to be brought into line so that, without being too nasty about it, they're not going to just look like individual boxes with a different thing above the door.
I think Councillor Stansfield, you make a very good point, not least when we put so much effort into Edward Street and you know, Topping Street, that, you know, and indeed the siting of the church. Carl Carrington, would you like to have could you respond to that particular query?
Do you need me to go through all of that again? Essentially, the building would have had a rhythm of very similar shop fronts running around it anyway. The reason they look quite different now is that there's a lot of signage been added, there have been shutters added. So essentially later, and perhaps in some cases inappropriate changes have been made to them over time. And I think this is what the scheme seeks to correct. It will actually enhance the local listed building. Some bits will go, but that's actually very much about structural practicality, but it will still retain the overall look of an Art Deco building. The quality of the materials we've been assured will be excellent. And the one thing we are doing, because I think one of the complaints we can constantly get as a local authority, is we are not having recessed doorways, because recessed doorways are often sort of hotspots for trouble, if you like. And we have made a commitment to a lot of local businesses that where possible we will try and unwrinkle their frontages so they don't have that problem. So I think that in conjunction with the planners in our department, we've come to the conclusion that this is an excellent scheme. It preserves the Art Deco look and feel of the building. It gives a more durable shop front. And essentially, I don't think it's compromised the historic pattern or rhythm. It's a strange building because it's got some pseudo-Egyptian and sort of rather odd motifs on it, but I think they are simply there for decoration. I don't think they are meant to represent anything. They are essentially just
we get used to calling it the Stanley Buildings because it's Talbot Square, the Stanley family, Talbot Road. They were big landowners, were they not? And you wonder whether it had some connection with them. But I think Carl is probably right that it is just a bit of fancy. Anybody else? Are we ready to vote? So we've had it moved and seconded that we approve this application. Those in favour, please show. That's unanimous, 7-0. Thank you very much indeed. Well, I'm grateful for the way you've accepted that, the proposals and the great deal of work, and I think we must pay credit to Claire and her, you know, well, it's almost a one-man band, is it, apart from consultations. but it's been going on for a good length of time. It's being funded greatly by that government grant, and I'm sure we're all very glad to see a very important piece of town architecture being restored in this way. Thank you very much indeed, everybody. The meeting is adjourned.